Welcome to our parent education series on substance abuse. This is part one of a four-part series that we designed as a district for our parents to have as a resource. I'm a social worker with the Pleasanton Unified School District, and I will be providing information for you in this four-part series. All the info that's compiled is from a variety of resources, and it'll be listed in the resources box that's in the HyperDoc that you access this video from. So we want to start off by talking about what is substance abuse. So there's really three different ways that substance abuse can manifest itself. The first is using illegal drugs to get high. So this is your kind of common sense things like ecstasy, LSD, cocaine. And then the other way is using legal drugs at an illegal age. So at this point, the laws are that for you to use cigarettes or alcohol, you need to be 21 years of age. And so anyone under that age using those substances, it would be considered substance abuse. And then the third way is using prescribed medication inappropriately. So things like Xanax that are typically prescribed for anxiety, or Adderall, which is typically prescribed for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or cough medicine, which is typically, designed for if you have a cough or some kind of physical sickness. It's when you're using those things when you don't actually have that diagnosis, or if you're combining those medications with another substance, such as alcohol. We really want to equip you as parents to be able to recognize the warning signs of substance use. So we're going to go through several different areas of warning signs, and we'll start with personal appearance because that's typically one of the easier things to pick up on. So to start with, messy, showing lack of care for appearance. This is specifically if your student was someone that was very well groomed before or cared a lot about appearance, and you're seeing a shift, this can be an indication for you that substance use might be in the picture. Things like poor hygiene, not showering, brushing your teeth, washing your hair. Red, flushed cheeks or face can be an indication of currently being under the influence, specifically of alcohol. Track marks on arms or legs. So track marks are from when a student is using injections to intravenously shoot up. And so these are typically seen on the arms or the legs where there's veins that they can use. But there's lots of other places in your body that have veins that you can inject drugs intravenously. So looking out for those, but also looking out for how your student might be trying to cover those marks up. So an example of this would be wearing long sleeve shirts in warm weather. And then burns or soot on fingers from smoking, or maybe a lot of dirt or something under their nails from handling the drugs like marijuana. Some personal habits to keep an eye out for are clenching teeth, the smell of smoke on breath or clothes. Along with that, chewing gum or mints, or having a strong odor of cologne or perfume to cover up the smell of the drugs. Over-the-counter preparations to reduce eye reddening, nasal irritation, or bad breath. So one of the side effects of smoking marijuana is that you can have a lot of bloodshot eye going on. And so a lot of times students will carry around eye drops that they can use before they go home so they don't look as suspicious. So if you're finding eye drops in your student's backpack or in their jacket pocket and they're not someone that typically uses them, this could be something to look out for. Frequently breaking curfew, cash flow problems. So if your student is given a certain amount of allowance each week, or you know they're earning a certain amount of money from their job, but it's still not enough, that could be an indication that maybe that money is being spent on other things. Reckless driving, car accidents, unexplained dents in a car, avoiding eye contact. We know that one of the best ways to determine if someone is under the influence is based on what their eyes look like. And so if your student's trying to avoid looking you in the eye, that could be something to be aware of. Things like locked doors, going out every night, secretive phone calls. So if there are certain numbers that call through that your student always leaves the room to answer or won't pick up around you, that could be an indication for you. And then sudden appetite or munchies. So this is a challenge because we do recognize that teenagers eat a lot. But if you notice that your student is eating an excessive amount at certain times, this could be an indication that they're high, specifically on marijuana. As far as behavioral issues, a huge indicator is a change in relationship with family members or friends. So maybe suddenly changing peer groups or pulling away from certain family members. Loss of inhibitions, mood changes, or emotional instability. So really high highs or really low lows for their moods. Loud, obnoxious behavior, laughing at nothing, being unusually clumsy, stumbling, lack of coordination or poor balance, being sullen, withdrawn, or depressed, being unusually tired, silent and uncommunicative, being really hostile, angry or uncooperative. We see a lot of times when students are coming down from the influence of prescription medication, specifically Xanax, that they take on a very hostile attitude. They're being deceitful or secretive, making endless excuses. Continuing on red flags for behavioral issues, we also see decreased motivation, lethargic movement, inability to speak intelligibly with like slurred speech or rapid fire speech, so speaking really fast, inability to focus, hyperactivity, being unusually elated, periods of sleepiness or high energy, and then followed by long periods of catch-up sleep, and then disappearance for long periods of time. As far as school or work-related signs, truancy or loss of interest in schoolwork can be a big indicator. So this can be, they're not going to school because they're at home using or, leaving school to use with friends, or their use in the evenings is preventing them from being in a place where they can go to school the following day. So maybe they're staying home and sleeping all day because they were up all night high. Loss of interest in extracurricular activities, hobbies, or sports. Failure to fulfill responsibilities at school or work. Complaints from teachers or coworkers, and then obviously reports of intoxication at school or work. Some health issues that you might see are nosebleeds, runny nose. We know that when students snort cocaine, this really irritates their nasal passages, and so a lot of times you'll hear a student sniffling for the next couple days, or it sounds like sniffling, and this is a byproduct of snorting the cocaine. Frequent sickness, sores or spots around the mouth, queasy or nauseous, seizures, vomiting, wetting lips or excessive thirst. This is usually because students report experiencing something called cotton mouth when they're under the influence, where their mouth is really dry. Sudden or dramatic weight loss or gain if they're not trying to diet or trying to bulk up. Skin abrasions and bruises, accidents or injuries, and then things like depression, headaches, and sweatiness. Some home or car related things to look out for would be the disappearance of prescription or over-the-counter pills or medications. It's really important that you keep track as a parent of what is in your medicine cabinet, because not only do your kids have access to it, but any kid that enters your house really has access to whatever's in your medicine cabinet. So some students will just steal an entire bottle at once. Other students are a little more stealth and will take, one or two pills at a time until they have the desired amount so that it's less obvious. Also, things like missing alcohol or cigarettes. So if you're someone that smokes or drinks alcohol and you notice that your supply is dwindling, that's important for you to keep track of that. Disappearance of money or valuables. This is really common when a student is trying to hide their drug addiction and they need to fund it. Suspicious smells in the car. So as always, things like smoke or marijuana, but also the smell of like really heavy air fresheners to try and cover it up would be something to look for. Appearance of unusual containers or wrappers like frisbees or aluminum foil. So a lot of times students will use a flat surface to prepare their drugs. If you know that your child does not typically go out and play catch with frisbees, but you're finding these frisbees in their car or in their room, that could be something to pay attention to. And then appearance of unusual drug apparatuses. You'll see in the hyperdoc where all these resources are coming from that there's a link to a video that was produced by the Pleasanton Police Department, and this has some examples of different drug apparatuses to look for. And then finding hidden stashes of alcohol. So we really want to encourage you as parents to look out for functioning addicts. So a functioning addict is an individual that is considered successful in life, yet they're hiding an addiction to alcohol or drugs. So the common stereotype of an addict involves people that are obviously making a mess of their life, and this behavior is usually associated with criminality and poverty. So the problem is this hides the reality that many addicts don't fit into the stereotype. And there's plenty of individuals that would be considered successful in life, yet they're hiding an addiction to alcohol or drugs. These people are typically referred to as high-functioning addicts, and they actually account for about half of all addicts. And the fact that these people are so successful at camouflaging their problem can mean that they ultimately cause more harm to their physical and mental health. So, a lot of the risks of being a functioning addict can be that they can use their success in life as justification for continuing their use, because they have the ability to show success outwardly. It means that there's a lot less pressure on them to change their behavior. So it's important that we are looking out for PUSD students that can be doubling as functioning addicts. A lot of times what we see is these kids that are using on a regular basis are actually still achieving high grades. They're successful in sports or extracurricular activities. They have lots of friends. They have a groomed appearance. And a lot of times parents don't pick up on the fact that there was any kind of addiction until later when their student is in college. But it is possible to not fit the criteria of your typical addict and still have an addiction to drugs and alcohol. We also know that tolerance is a state in which an organism no longer responds to a drug, so a higher dose is required to achieve the same effect. And that's why a lot of times our students are building up such a tolerance to drugs that they can go to class and be under the influence, and it's not noticeable because they've learned how to function so well under the influence. So we want to encourage you as parents that there are a lot of red flags to look out for. And we also want to encourage you to continue watching this series. In our next section, we'll talk about substance use and co-occurring disorders, as well as the progression of addiction. And then we'll finish up by talking about how the teenage brain plays into all of this. Thanks for joining us.